We got another typo?
No.
I'm not making fun of you, because I
would
sometimes
make fun
miss
of me.
typos.
I would make fun of me. What am I doing wrong with icon?
Oh, God, don't ask me.
Oh, that's,
Is that
Ask
the pop-up
Benjamin.
thing?
Hi.
Can't get into tonight.
I'm still learning to.
Oh, it might be that you're not connected.
All my
We're correcting a little technical difficulty, so we'll be starting about a minute or two late, but we'll start in a minute or two here.
Just refresh. Oh, it's doing that anyway.
it might be
Like
the
the day before Christmas break.
inadequate
This is
Wi-Fi.
gonna be our last meeting.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it's not
Yep, well, you're
great.
off the hook. Counts as
And then, whoops.
next week after next, because it would have been for the 18th.
I can't be here the 18th, that's what it is.
Yeah, no, no meeting unless there's a crisis. So,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
so
bet.
far we
All
were
right.
able to
Good
get
deal.
everything on this
Hopefully
meeting,
not
so.
one that involves municipal government in this municipality.
now I won't be wearing my festive necklace because it's too early in the season.
He knows
I thought it might be tacky.
Sure.
All right, if we can have commissioners take their seats, we'll start the meeting in 1 minute. Got a little bit of a day before Christmas break vibe going here and get everybody wrangled up here. I know. What day is today? All right, I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Traverse City City Commission on today, Monday, December 4th. If everyone can please rise, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Also like to take a moment, say that we always begin our meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. Thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. I will now hand it over to Benjamin for our roll call.
Yes, and good evening, Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Shaw.
Here.
Commissioner Stanley.
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell.
Here.
Commissioner Werner.
Here.
Commissioner Wilson, excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem Wilson.
Here.
And Mayor Shamrow.
Here. All right, and then we'll have any announcements from Nate, interim city manager?
I have nothing, but if I could have like a minute at the end of the meeting, I wouldn't mind. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
And from the clerk?
Yes, meetings to announce for this week, the week of December 4th. A Planning Commission meeting will be on Tuesday, December 5th. That'll be at 7 p.m. in the Commission chambers. The Mobility and Parking Advisory Board will meet. That'll be Wednesday, December 6th at 11 a.m. in the committee room, which is on the second floor of the Governmental Center. The City and Garfield Township Recreational Authority will meet on Wednesday, December 6th at 7 p.m. at Garfield Township Hall on Veterans Drive. The Parks and Recreation Commission will meet on Thursday, December 7th at 6:30 p.m. in the Commission chambers. And finally, the Downtown Development Authority study session is for this Friday, December 8th at noon, and that'll be held in the Commission chambers. And we just want to remind residents and business owners to, of course, keep their sidewalks clear of snow and ice for the safety and accessibility of all. And I just want to remind everyone up here to please speak directly into your microphone so folks can hear you. And that's all that I've got. Thank you.
All right, well then let's just keep it going with the consent calendar.
Sure. The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public can ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed from it and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the commission, and such requests are automatically respected. If an item isn't removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. Item 1, consideration of approving the minutes of the November 20, 2023 meeting of the City Commission. Approval recommended. Item 2, consideration of enacting an amendment to the Traverse City Code of Ordinances which would conditionally rezone the property commonly known as 1028 Carver Street from mixed density residential district to R3 multiple family dwelling district with conditions as submitted voluntarily by the applicant, and consideration of authorizing the related agreement is recommended by the Planning Commission. Enactment and approval recommended. Item 3, consideration of authorizing the issuance of a request for proposals and allocation of up to $5,000 from the Public Art Trust Fund and approving the installation of a third installment of art at the rotating art collection near the Riverine Complex as recommended by the Arts Commission, and consideration of authorizing the issuance of a request for proposals and allocation up to $2,000 from the Public Art Trust Fund, and approving the installation of 2 artistic benches for trail enhancement near the Murchie Bridge and Senior Center as recommended by the Arts Commission. Approval recommended. Item 4, consideration of authorizing a contract for the replacement of the chiller for air conditioning purposes at the Carnegie Building. Approval recommended. Item 5, consideration of waiving the competitive bidding process and authorizing a consultant agreement for preliminary design stage oversight for the progressive design build of the preliminary treatment improvements and UV disinfection improvements for the wastewater treatment plant. Approval recommended. Item 6, consideration of authorizing a contract for the replacement of a garage vehicle lift with a $15,000 allowance for unforeseen inflation issues. Approval recommended. Item 7, consideration of approving a senior center gift acceptance and donor recognition naming policy. Approval recommended. And finally, item 8, consideration of adopting a traffic control order which would provide for an always stop at the intersection of Franklin Street and Washington Street. Approval requested by the City Commission.
Thank you, Benjamin. Does any commissioner want any item removed, please? Raise your
Number
hand.
6, please.
Right, we've got a couple people. Go
Item
ahead,
4.
Mitch. Number 4, and then Jackie.
Number 6.
Okay. 4 and 6, any other items? Okay, we'll open up to the public. Anybody in the public like to remove any items that are not 4 or 6 from the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a motion to, as amended.
Motion.
Okay, consent calendar is amended. Do we have a second?
Support.
All right, thank you, Wilson and Stanley there. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll go to item 4. The Carnegie Building chiller replacement. So did you have some questions about that, Jackie, or?
No, I asked for
Oh,
number 6.
sorry, sorry, I was looking at you last and I flipped it in my brain. Mitch, what questions did you have?
Yes, just, do we have clarity that the additional balance is coming out of the,
Carnegie Building Fund,
yes, thank you.
which we had in the report.
Yep.
I didn't look, I missed it. So yes, there is a separate fund for the Carnegie Building. The balance would come from that fund.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Getting
you.
that clarity for the general public.
Yep. Any other discussion, or was it somebody like to make a motion now?
Yeah, I'll move that. I move that the mayor and city clerk execute a contract with Hearst Mechanical of Traverse City in an amount not to exceed $80,800 for the replacement and installation of a new chiller for the Carnegie Building. Such contract subject to approval as to its substance by the interim city manager and its form by the city attorney, with funds available in the Carnegie Building Fund.
All right, second?
Support.
Okay, Treadwell and Stanley. Any other comments here? Anybody from the public? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, now moving on to item 6, consideration of authorizing a contract for the garage lift. And now, I apologize, Jackie, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. My question has to do with budget impact. I noted that roughly half of this amount was already accounted for in the 23-24 budget, and that I just wondered about the source of the additional $217,000 funds, if there is a trade-off that we're making, and if so, I'd like to be aware of that.
Now, on this one, I thought that
Okay,
amount
that
was
is,
covered.
yes. So there's a couple things going on here. So the garage fund does have a fund balance in there. That's where the dollars would come from for this one. Essentially, this is a result of a little bit of what we're seeing in some of these specialized projects. To my knowledge, and I think Michelle's here, I'm not sure she would know the answer to this, but based on my current understanding, we are not taking anything that's currently planned in the garage fund off the table because of this use of fund balance. Is that correct?
Hi, Art Krieger, Director of Municipal Utilities. Frank and I have talked about this project a little bit, and he informed me that the money was available. He had talked to Brian Postma. I can't quote which fund it was coming from, but to answer your question, I believe that's correct, that it won't take from another project
Yeah.
and forfeit that project, is how I understand it.
Yeah, it's not from the city general fund, just the garage fund. Just for some additional context in case there's interest in it, but we put this out to bid once and only got one response. We tried to expand that reach and still only got the one response. And unfortunately, this is a piece of equipment that is starting to make us a little nervous.
Thank you very much for the extra info.
Great question. All right, do we have a motion then?
I move that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute a contract with American Hoist Air and Lube in the amount of $417,781, plus an allowance of $15,000 to address unforeseen installation issues for the replacement and installation of garage vehicle lift. Such contract subject as to its substance by the city manager and its form by the city attorney, with funds therefore available in Garage General Fund, Fund 661.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Okay, motion by Anderson, second by Shaw. Any other comment from the commission? Any from the public? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, we'll continue on to old business now with our payment in lieu of tax, some adjustments to our current brand-new policy from last month. So if you want to take that. Nate.
City attorney is going to walk through this item. Her and I worked very closely on this, and she'll explain why.
Okay. So this is a factor of being first in line when we started under this new statute in the state of Michigan, pretty much. So it may occur that we bring some more tweaks back to you as we go. As we worked through the first two pilots that were approved, we realized, which is something frankly I just missed, is that the one pilot that was approved at Breakwater is an existing building and they're existing tenants. And fair housing laws require us to not just, exit people out of the building so that we can have folks in a different bracket enter into the building. So there needs to be some time, sort of a grace period, to allow that to occur through attrition. So that's the first change. We took the 18 months to mirror the 18 months that that is addressed in new construction as well. And that should be plenty of time. And in the interim, we'll just calculate the pilot based on those units that are occupied by workforce, and we'll go from there. The second part was a request that we have some sort of a formula so that everybody understands going into the project how the pilot will be exactly calculated. And thankfully, HUD has a helpful form that they use for LIHTC. And I talked to the folks at MISTA, and we sort of pirated that form and reworked it to work for our purposes under our program. And so that is the second part of the amendment that we worked together on and that we are recommending for tonight.
Great. Any questions from the commission? Go ahead, Heather.
What happens if 18 months go by and they haven't attritioned out enough people to meet the
Then we're in that situation. I think I mentioned before that sort of the beauty of this pilot that MISTA is not involved in is that the city has a direct line to address those issues if there's not compliance with the pilot. So it can be ultimately terminated if it's not compliant with the pilot. And so we would work through, a process with the applicant at that point and figure out where to go from there.
And just to piggyback on that really quick, so if somebody, let's say, 18 months should be enough for a contract to have been over for a rental, but let's say somebody was in one unit or two units, we then also could prorate it that doesn't count towards their pilot, that would be a full tax bill.
Yes.
So-
Any of the units that are not occupied by workforce will be paying the pilot, which is the full amount of the taxes they would otherwise pay. So that's how that calculation would work. And just so that everyone's clear, that in conversations with the Breakwater applicant, they don't expect to need the 18 months. That's been the understanding that in our discussions with them.
Yeah, they seemed clear enough in their discussion at the county meeting that they have some turnover incidentally, and they were expecting to open up those units.
Yeah, and this same type of policy, well, even though this is under workforce, but a lot of similarities in the East Bay Flats project, because same types of things, people have to attrition out. There needs to be time for renovations, and we have a number of other buildings in the community that long-term could potentially be purchased and converted to affordable or workforce housing. So again, we're just trying to get ahead of this as we learn, and I would not be surprised if you see more tweaks coming in the future.
Great. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Jackie.
One of my interests in approving future pilots has to do with the trade-off of tax revenues. And I wondered if there was any possibility that the calculation form could be modified slightly so that there's an office section that where the approximate property taxes without the pilot could be shown somewhere and somehow. Is that feasible?
We can either do it on that form, or we can certainly get that information to the commission as well as pilots come forward.
Okay,
Are
I
you-
think,
Can I ask for clarification?
Yeah.
Are you asking for, to be able to show that the non-residential are paying the full tax? Or are you asking for us to be able to limit the tax on the office that is serving the work?
no,
Okay.
I'm interested in a pre and post
Got it, okay.
scenario.
Thank you.
So what property taxes were being paid before the pilot? What will the property total taxes be paid?
You want to see the difference in income?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Just transparency.
I would just ask that if there's a motion on this item, if we put that in the motion, because then we know we've got the city commission is amending that policy, and you could say words subject to the city attorney or whatever it happens to be, but then that saves us a step. We can certainly bring it back, but if Lauren is very clear on what you're asking,
Oh, I can add a
let's get it all
box to
done
the
right now.
bottom of the
Yeah.
form. I think that's pretty easy.
Or maybe in number 3, application, or it wouldn't be an application requirement necessarily.
Yeah, I'd put it in the policy, and maybe it becomes a part of the report that we provide to the city commission when you're considering them.
I have another
Go ahead,
question.
Heather. Yeah.
Is it appropriate to ask for a summary of what the problem was at the county level with these pilots?
Or we don't know yet. They're voting tomorrow, or Wednesday, but go ahead. Tim.
May I? I appreciated the heads up that we got from Mr. Geinzer in a communication. And so I went and I watched the recording, so not live, but I watched the recording, as others may have as well. And it's not clear whether there will be the votes for the county to participate. And so if there's interest, and a county commissioner or have a relationship of any kind, to reach out and see if there are concerns to be addressed, et cetera. But by the discussion, it was a very good discussion, but to me, it's not clear whether the county will participate or not.
And also the form of their participation is not clear. Since there are multiple options, they could decide to go right along with any pilot that a lower municipality, such as the city, instigates. They could decide on a similar blanket way policy to not participate in any of them, or they could have a case by case, or they have set criteria.
And this goes to, so this is, if anybody's interested, both up here or in the public, this is on their agenda for Wednesday morning. So if people are, especially if you're concerned about this pilot not being supported at the county, emails, or I believe the county begins and ends with public comment, so you can even slide in at 9 if you can, and then take off. We do our meetings a little different than most municipalities do, that we allow comments on every motion. So in some ways, like potentially Wednesday morning for some people, that might help. But yeah, my understanding was there was a little bit of there's several questions, and obviously we put this policy through pretty quickly because we had the advantage of having Lauren, who was also helping with the efforts at the state level to have this disseminated throughout the state. But I think that there were some questions about, some of the questions got into the discussion that we have up here a lot, which is using affordable as a blanket term when it's not. Affordable is defined as 60% and under, 80%, up to 80% in some ways. 80 to 120, which is what these pilots that we're talking about address, are for workforce housing. So a lot of times we hear people saying, our servers, our teachers, our firemen, they don't qualify for affordable housing. They make just a little too much, but not enough to pay for market rate. And that's what this pilot is addressing, that gap. And I think we've been in the weeds on this for several months, if not years. I looked at Commissioner Warner especially. But I think that that's something that's really important to point out, because it's not going to be a dramatic $800 a month apartment that's going to come out of this, but it is going to help some working people if we can get these passed. So, go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, and I would say that we have benefited from Lauren's expertise in serving in the Michigan Municipal League's drafting policy for this. But other levels of government, notably the Michigan Association of Counties or the Michigan Township Association, have not been following right along and drafting their own similar legislation. So we are ahead of the curve, and now townships that are looking to emulate what cities are now able to do, or counties that are responding to what cities are now able to do, are a little behind the ball and trying to play catch up.
I'll volunteer everybody that Lauren's available if they need to consult an expert here, that we're very lucky to have her. Okay, so with that, do we not have a motion for this, correct?
I can read one for
Okay.
you. That the amendments to the payment in lieu of taxes policy is submitted with the official materials for the December 4, 2023 City Commission meeting, including that information be or a section to the form be added to provide for what would be the net revenue to the city with or without the pilot be included.
That's a great motion. Who wants to say they made that? Great
make that
job,
motion.
Commissioner Stanley. A
And I'll
second?
support it.
All right, Treadwell. Just to clarify for myself, because I think I lost it in the mix there, that will go on the report that comes to the commission, the added part. It won't be part of the application for like staff deciding it will come forward, correct?
This comes after the
Yes,
staff.
yes, that's what I just want to make sure. Okay, perfect. So any other comments from the commission? Anybody from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. We passed that correction, and as was said, we'll probably see some more of those as we work through the process more.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to new business, our old friend, the Wayne Hill Booster Pump. I'll hand that over to you, Nate, and/or Art.
Art is going to be much more equipped to handle this item than I will be.
Very good. Good evening, Art Krieger, Director of Municipal Utilities. So I'll just highlight a few things that I included in the memo in the packet. This project is outlined to basically address 5 main operational deficiencies that were noted in the 2021 Water System Reliability Study. That's a report that Eagle, the state, requires all water systems of our size to complete about every 5 years. So we're coming up on another round for that. But it basically, like I said, operationally, it's been working, but I'll say it's been limping along for quite some time. There's been some challenges from the water plant side of providing the volume of water up there that's needed to meet the demands at certain times of the year. When you build a water system, you want to make sure you cover the worst case scenario. So we need to be able to fight a fire as well as provide adequate water supply and pressure to all the customers. And we also need to meet a peak demand during that time, because Murphy's Law is out there. And if you ever have experienced things at the wrong time, that's when those kinds of things happen. So we want to be prepared for, you know, the worst case scenario. So as I mentioned, we've been limping along. This project, actually, the current system that we have at the Wayne Hill Booster Pump Station was built in 2006. And then it was projected to be able to last for the demand at that time for about 10 years. So we made it through 2016 and actually got another 7 bonus years out of it, and here we are. As I mentioned, we're limping along. Some of the things that we struggle with is keeping enough water in that tank at times of the year. So the way the pumps are set up, the elevation of the pumps, they only can draw from the top half of the tank. So we're kind of just letting this bottom 7 feet of the tank just sit there. It does get used and mixed over time, but that's only about 700,000 gallons, and that can go pretty quick on a high demand day. During the city, during the summer months, the city can pump 10 million gallons a day, 12 million gallons a day. 700,000 sounds like a lot, but it's really not a lot of volume to work with. So there's times when you have to pump harder at the water plant to get that water up there, to keep it above the 7-foot mark, because we have to keep those pumps from pulling in air, which would cause damage to their impellers and things like that. So, that's a little bit of the background. And like I mentioned, the city is obligated to provide the adequate water supply, fire protection to all areas served. That's a minimum 20 PSI for residential and 1,500 gallons a minute fire flow at that peak demand. And again, that's a worst case scenario. The next item I'd like to just talk about is, I already did about the tank depth, so we'll move on from there, sorry. So the pumps that we're planning to put in with this project, we're addressing some pump issues, we're addressing storage issues, operational issues. Pumps are planned to be better suited for the current conditions that we're seeing. We're not necessarily boosting the volume that those pumps can provide. The current pumps can pump enough, but they were designed for a lesser demand back in the early 2000s. So this will help upgrade it, and they'll be more energy efficient, which is a good thing. We'll save on energy. We do have variable frequency drives in the pumps that are there now, but there's a lot of stops and starts. Just the way these pumps are on their curve. I'm getting into some nerd engineering things, but pumps operate on a curve, and these pumps are not operating on their optimal part of the curve. So we're planning to put in better design pumps that will operate in a more of a sweet spot, if you will. And it would save energy overall. There's going to be lots of less stops and starts, and it'll just be a smoother running system over time. The other big thing I want to bring up is the savings over the first time we bid the project out. That was in the memo. It was about 1.23 million, and we had one bidder, and the engineering estimate at that time was about 650,000. So we said, no, we're not going to spend double on that project. We need it, but we were being frugal, and I believe, looking at it from all angles, how could we save money and still get this done? So it took some time over the last year or two, and we were able to rebid it out, and we had two bidders, and by rebidding it out without the state's drinking water, state revolving fund requirements, we were able to save about 40% off that first bid price. So the packet lists the bidders and the bids, and we're looking to award it to a contractor for $722,000. So I'll open it up to questions. If you have anything, I'll try to answer.
All right, Mitch?
Yes, is it just the state revolving fund requirements that caused the bids to, one, get two bids rather than just one, and them being significantly lower, and they're still higher than our initial estimate, more in line with what we'd expect?
I think there were several factors. That was a really busy time of projects out in there, out in the real
Every
world.
municipality had ARPA funds.
Yes,
and
so
other ways to throw.
we were
money
at a
into
disadvantage at that time, I think, because we were one of many projects out on the street, so to speak. Bidders were picking and choosing maybe the most, best possible project for them, and contractors do what they do. So I think it was a combination of timing and competition with other projects around the state, and the rates, say for workers, the Davis-Bacon wages, most contractors are actually needing to pay people about that rate or above anyway to keep good quality employees nowadays. So I don't think that one was a big determining factor of a higher cost, but the American Iron and Steel requirements is something the state had to connect to it due to federal money coming in. It kind of restricts what equipment you can actually use. This opens it up a little bit wider field and can be more competitive that way for equipment.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead, Tim.
is there any opportunity for something similar to the 2006 collaboration with private? I mean, there's more development, and that's why it was 50-50 back then. And what I'm hearing is there's been even more development, which is part of why upgrade is being requested. Have the private developers in the Leelanau County portion of Traverse City been approached about this? Do they have any responsibility?
It's been discussed, I would say, a couple years back, but we've had numerous developers come and go for that development. I think it's phase 2 or something of.
I can't even name it because I've lost track of what it is.
I think
but-
3 just got built where the apartment buildings are now, and 2 is up on the hill higher up. It was not received well by them, of course, because it would have been more money out of their pocket. And there's a lot of history with that Morgan Farms development with the city, and who should, sharing in the cost worked up front, and they were able to provide what they did. So I think, that was a good thing that happened at that time. The city was able to receive about half of the initial cost, which I think was around 1.2 million total. So I don't have any definite answer for you about collaboration because.
Well, that's okay. I get this, like, I can't point to it, even though I sat up here for a while, is that, like, when we have a big project downtown, like, there's steps that developers go through to kind of see whether city utilities are adequate for that new development. And, I mean, I assume the same applies up on the hill there, and so potentially, again, phase whatever of whichever project it was up on the hill, in the past, well, since 2006, they would have had to work with city engineering to see, like, well, maybe we don't quite have adequate utilities up there, and it was their responsibility to help fund those. That's, I guess, where I'm curious.
Sure.
Really quick, and
Sorry.
Jackie, I know you had your hand up. I have a follow-up question to this really quick, though. When it was presented initially, and they did do that initial investment, how many phases were planned when they were looking at that? So we know only a portion had gotten built, but when they present these plans, there's usually several phases laid out at once, even if they're not accomplished at that time. Do we know how many phases were laid out at that time?
From what I recall, there were 3 phases.
Okay, so that,
That's the original PUD,
okay, so that got them
unit
through 3
development.
phases in their minds.
right?
Okay, just,
And-
yeah.
Yeah, no,
I
great.
just
Thank you for
clarify.
following that. Because, maybe maybe they're only just catching up to the 2006 because of all the delays. Can I ask my other question?
I'm sorry, I didn't leave you a second.
No, that's
Sorry, Jackie.
okay. So I appreciate you being diplomatic and referring to times of year and summer and all, but to me, that's irrigation of people's lawns up at higher elevations. And I just find it as unfortunate that we as a community have to invest in infrastructure so people can all water their lawns at the same time. While maybe their friend's house down the street is on fire, like shut off your water sort of thing. But to that point, we have AMI now, which are smart meters. Potentially, there's a way to address some of this through the smart meters as far as, and I'm not saying like go back and do that, but hopefully as this moves forward, I assume will move forward, like use our smart meters that have been installed in every residence. And when our fire department responds to a call, set limits on what people can use. They can't water their lawns. If your neighbor's house is on fire, stop watering your lawn. But it can be automated. I mean, I think so. We have AMI. It'll take some,
need to look into
experts to
that.
figure it out and see
Right.
how it works. But
Right.
hopefully in the coming years, we could do something like
Yeah.
that. And as well, kind of tied to that in my mind, I disparage watering lawns, but just water conservation in general. You know, this body and previous bodies have asked, and not you, but asked the city manager to start looking at a different rate structure that encourages water conservation.
Agreed.
And we'll keep asking.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate what you're sharing. Thank you.
You bet.
Go ahead, Jackie, you've been very
Sorry,
patient, thank you.
thanks.
Well, my question really echoes Commissioner Werner's. I was curious because in the document you mentioned that the 2006 50/50 split agreement was going to support a 10-year build-out at Morgan Farms and Inkachi Woods. And so right now, apparently, we're at about 211 homes, and this new initiative will support build-out to 550 homes, which sounded to me like there would be a developer involved. And just, so I was interested to hear your response on
Okay.
that, and whether you foresee any future opportunities for developer participation.
That's it really depends on the developer and what they're willing to do to make their numbers work, because they have their own formulas for developing a parcel. So yeah, that's a hard question to answer, honestly. I do have a comment back on the conservation for water, and I'm a proponent of that as well. If we can use less overall, it would save money on energy, it would save planned improvements for future expansions. But I think the place for that is, like you mentioned, Commissioner Werner, more in the rate structure and not so much in the infrastructure's capabilities. So it would be better to have the ability, if the emergency came, to take care of it with the pumps and the operations side, but we can structure the rates so that the more you use, the more you pay, and it is like that, but it's very minimal currently. So we could work on that, and that's something on my to-do list that I plan on getting to. But so yeah, that was just a comment of conservation and how we can come from a different angle.
Did you have a question, Mitch?
Yes, this is primarily serving not just Wayne Street itself, but also Morgan Farms, which are parts of the city. But the service area does include parts of Garfield Township and Elmwood Township. And on the latter point, even though it's not the primary water service from the city to Elmwood Township, with the proposed 12-inch water main connection, it would provide more capacity and better water pressure and reliability. To what extent have the township, either at the government level or as just customers outside of the city, come to the table to pay a share of this cost?
Well,
Go ahead.
one thing to remember here is the water system, just like the wastewater system, it's a utility. And so they, theoretically, I mean, you can probably figure out a way to do it, but utilities should be supported through the rates. Generally, you're not going to see tax dollars go into a utility system. That being said, as part of, I don't want to use certain words, I don't want to freak anybody out, but if development continues to peak out in that way, or further expansion, those are conversations that would need to be had when it comes to ensuring that we can continue to service those areas. To some of the questions about developer participation, those are things that can happen, but it's not always a black and white thing. Typically, it's done through a PUD process, which was done back in 2006. You have to be able to tie it to a public benefit and all of that. And even then, there's been some cases that I've been told about. I don't know if it's real or it's just nonsense, but you have to make sure that it's a balanced and negotiated approach. You can't necessarily force it on. There's just some things you have to work through. So it's doable. The AMI thing is interesting. It's piqued my interest. I've got some thoughts on that, but I don't know if that completely answers your question, Commissioner Treadwell, but there are some roadblocks to that type of an approach.
Go ahead, Tim.
Just a partial response to Mr. Treadwell is that for water customers outside the city limits, and Art can correct me, so Garfield, Elmwood, if they're in some of these, what I'll call like stranded parts, they pay a higher rate.
Yes.
If they're out in like the bulk of Garfield Township, they're under like the master agreement. But if they're in these little obscure spots, they pay higher rates directly to the
Yes.
city.
Yeah, like this pipe or this booster station connects to a pipe that goes within 100 yards into Garfield Township and then snakes through Garfield Township before re-entering the city.
And that's where, oh, go ahead. Did you have your hand up, Mark? Oh, no, yours. That goes into kind of what was touched on here about utilities too. I think one of the reasons why we have plans assessed when they come forward is to see their impact on utilities. I often hear when we're out talking to the public, well, you know, this apartment building got added and it has 50 apartments in it. That has already gone through a process that's not going to be if everyone in that building is taking a shower at the same time and the neighborhood next door, everybody's watering their lawns, that we're going to not have water in the city. All of that gets adjusted and arranged. And so that's why we look at that's where we look at that exchange of maybe helping out a little if it's a brand new area needs, or at least pockets, like Commissioner Warner said, that needs to be addressed in a different way than we're already connected to. But we can't go in, correct me if I'm wrong, but legally we can't go in and kind of say, oh, you're building a new house here. We're going to ask you to pay for this much because we're putting the water here and it's in the city. And so we have to kind of keep in mind that there's certain rules for utilities that we can't always do one-offs. And that's why we have these contracts and do these agreements up front. Now, different things open up different problems, but that's where we're at right now. And so that's where I asked that question about the first 3 phases were already covered in that initial conversation. They just didn't get there in 10 years or at close. They've been through a lot. So they've gone through a lot, yes. So just a clarifying point there. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to say? All right, go ahead, Tim.
Make a motion that the competitive bidding process be waived and that the mayor and city clerk execute a consultant agreement with Hubble Roth Clark in the amount of $80,000 for construction engineering services related to the Wayne Hill Booster Pump Station Improvement Project, with such agreement subject to approval as to its substance by the interim city manager and its form by the city attorney, with funds available in the water fund, and further that the mayor and city clerk execute a construction contract with Grand Traverse Construction in the amount of $722,000 for Wayne Hill Booster Pump Station improvements as outlined in the November 22nd, 2022 communication from the Director of Municipal Utilities, with such contract subject to approval as to its substance by the interim city manager and its form by the city attorney, with funds available in the water fund.
You read all that. Don't leave them hanging, guys.
Support.
Thank you, Mitch. Okay, Commissioner Warner made the motion, support by Treadwell. Any comments from the commission? Any comments from the public? Bringing it back, I'll just add one quick one that I didn't say before. I'm really pleased as former utility board member that we're talking about potential time of use rates for water. I think that's a really great progressional thing we're looking at. That said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. So now we're on to the West End Beach stabilization repairs.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm going to do my best on this item because obviously I'm coming in late to the game on this. So I'm really kind of coming at this as where I see we are at right now. And I'll try to go through at least some of the history as I understand it. And then ultimately, I'm seeking very clear direction through a vote from the City Commission on how to proceed here. So as I think most folks know, the West End Beach parking area, I think is what we refer to it as, was damaged with some high waters we saw in 19 and 20. Following that impact, we had some discussions about doing repair and maintenance. That was brought to the City Commission. It was requested to go to a study session. There was a presentation and a discussion at the study session, which is ultimately, as far as I can tell, why we're here. I did watch that to make sure I had the context, and there was obviously a study session, so there was no vote. There was no clear consensus there. There was definitely a lot of different ideas and some discussion there, but I think, from my observation, where we're at is staff trying to work through that discussion and bring back alternatives that try to get at a little bit of what everybody was talking about, getting a more sustainable solution, still having some parking. Right or wrong approach, to me, that's irrelevant at this point in time. What I'm here to present to you tonight is where we're at today. And so There was a lot of discussion at that study session about a more sustainable design. There was discussion about tearing out the parking lot. And so ultimately, what we have before you this evening, I wouldn't say that they're the only three options here, but what is available to look at is there was a conceptual request for a design from Inhabitec that would restore the parking and provide a more natural treatment to protect against high waters, to protect against erosion. It kept the parking lot roughly the same footprint. There was a little bit of additional access down to the beach with a couple little walkways, and it had some improved ADA access. We're trying to give you some very rough estimates here so you guys have a full context as we seek discussion. But from the research we've done and talking with some contractors, that conceptual design, if it was put out to bid, we're thinking is going to be north of $250,000. We have $200,000 budgeted right now. The staff tried to do an alternative, lower cost approach that still included some similar type features, not maybe fully natural, not core logs and what have you that Inhabitec had, but trying to restore the parking lot to a functional area to bring back some more dune grasses like we've done in other areas. Again, very rough estimates. We're thinking that's somewhere to between $140,000 and $200,000. The other option that I should have put some more information in here, but we also provided an option to remove the parking because I know that was brought up as well. Keep in mind the numbers that you're seeing here, we're estimating roughly 80 to 90,000. That does not include putting something back. Like that doesn't include, let's say for example, we ripped out all the parking, we had Inhabitec design some sort of replacement there. That we don't have any numbers on that. That's not been designed or conceptualized yet. So you have to keep that in mind. Whether or not tearing out the parking is going to impact our grant, we don't know that for sure yet, right? We know that it is something that could impact scoring. This is not well, if you tear out the parking lot, we're going to lose the grant. That's not what we're getting at here. These are some concerns and some reasons that were a part of us being awarded that grant that could potentially see an impact. Ultimately, where I'm coming to you from is someone who's coming at this late, that's seen the time and effort that's gone into this, and it's been a lot of time and energy and dollars spent. We need some very clear direction from the city commission on as far as what you want to see. If what the commission as a body wants to see is tear out the parking lot, we can do that. We can get a design together, we can go out to bid, and we can bring that back. If it's the hybrid approach or if it's something different, we just need to know what that is, because what we don't want to do is spend more time and effort on this project, bring it back to the city commission, and find out it doesn't meet expectations, and now we're right back to where we were. So this item tonight is asking for very specific direction on what you want at this location.
And just one moment, just to clarify as we go through these, because of how the motion is written, the option one, if we're going to do the insert the blank down the line, is the city plan to stabilize. Option two is the Inhabitec, and option three is the removal of the parking lot.
And there could be an option four.
Well,
I mean, it could be,
Let's
Yeah,
let's
I
see where the
mean,
discussion goes, but
yeah.
like Commissioner Stanley had your hand up.
So I think I probably have a question about a hypothetical option four, which is to, so this, when we're talking about restoring the parking lot, are we talking about rebuilding all of the spaces that were previously there? Is there an option to do away with the part that has been subject to erosion? It looks like there are about 10 spaces that are unaffected and are at least 50 feet from the high water mark that could be maintained while also then allowing the rest of the area to revert to a natural state.
So the answer to that question is yes, we can do that. And in part, that's what we're asking for this evening is what is that direction? I think in part, you know, sometimes we do our best to interpret the intent of a city commission. And I think that's in part what's happened here. We did not follow up with that. You need a vote. We need a vote. It might be an uncomfortable conversation or whatever. It needs to be a vote. And that's kind of where we're at here tonight. If the city commission's goal is, look, we still want to make sure we've got good accessible space there. Maybe we don't need what's there right now. If that's where you guys are at, we can do that. But I don't want staff guessing on what that intent is and come back and we took out too many spaces, or we didn't take out enough, or it's whatever it happens to be. So yes, that can certainly be part of the conversation.
And thank you for bringing this forward. I appreciate you requesting that kind of clarification on behalf of staff. I feel like that's something that's very important for us as we move forward.
Absolutely. And just to help with the discussion too, the reason why I was saying let's keep it to 1, 2, and 3 is, I think to your point, Commissioner Stanley, that if we say, maybe we don't want as many parking spaces, but we want the parking spaces, we want the ADA accessibility that we've got the grant on, all of that, we could also say, we want that, but as part of A, where city engineering does X, or B, where Inhabitec does Y. So I guess that's where I'm saying we can keep it to these 3 to, again, provide some of that clarification with, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. We can make some tweaks to the options that are presented, such as cutting down the number of spots. Go ahead. Sorry, Heather. I'm looking at you. Other people can't see that.
Yeah, the problem with 1 and 2, though, and cobbling together 1 and 2 with 3 is that 1 and 2 are using geotextile, and it's unacceptable. It's plastic. The last time that it was down there, I think they were working on the volleyball courts. It sloughs off into this fluff. It's absolutely toxic, horrible stuff. As far as I'm concerned, both 1 and 2 are just are plans for a reality that just doesn't exist anymore. I sent you that material about our water levels are predicted to rise 1.5 feet, which doesn't seem like that much, but if you look at the other information I sent about the mean levels over the last more than 100 years, we are at the mean level right now. When it was really bad back in 19 and 20, that was only 2 feet more than where we are right now. So we're going up 1.5 feet over the next 10 years. The parkway is in a floodplain. That whole parking lot is in a floodplain. I think I am in favor of leaving a few parking spots there, ADA accessible parking spots, and using a portion of that as a drop-off, so people can go to the beach. It's not the greatest beach in the world. People, deep water scuba people like it. It's freezing cold over there, all the cold. It is. It's the coldest place. You go down to Bryant Park, it's nice and warm. You go. But I think the bathroom has to go away. With a new parkway remodel, there's going to be a nice intersection on Hall Street. There is a bathroom at Veterans, but it's a beach that's used so little, and particularly since 2019, since it all got washed out, that a better place for the bathroom is down in between the volleyball courts and the open space. That's where the population is. That's where we could use a new bathroom. So, the other thing is that it really is within our setback, our 50-foot setback, and if we're not following our own policies, then what are we doing? I know that there is at least one commissioner here who supports a riparian buffer. The whole thing is also within, not only within the setback, but within the riparian buffer. And selling a riparian buffer ordinance to the public is going to take a lot of, well, it's going to mean that we have to adhere to and promote and encourage good behavior. And that's not, if we're sticking a bathroom in a parking lot right there on the edge of the bay, then we're not following our own good, best practices. So I'm for a plan D. I don't know if 10 is maybe too many, but 4 or 5 ADA parking spots, a place to drop off people, move the bathroom down to the volleyball courts.
Anybody else have a hand up, Tim? And then
You wanted specific. I think the pavement, including we'll move parallel parking toward the Parkway side, 4
Yes.
ADA spots, maybe if it's long enough, spot for dropping off paddle boards and such. But that width of pavement could be 24 feet. That's enough for the parallel parking, a driving zone, as well as the trail. That way the trail can be waterside, and it can be painted or however it's done. But it's crazy to have vehicle traffic crossing our most popular trail that's only going to become more popular. So in my mind, like roughly 24 feet should be enough width. I don't know what it is now, and move it as far as we're allowed to the south, based on MDOT ownership right of way and our ownership, et cetera. I agree there should be no geotextile involved. Previous bodies discussed that as far as adding to microplastics. It wasn't that meeting. I don't know which meeting it was, but I know we talked about it. We don't really need a concrete footer there. We could just use large natural stone blocks. And between those large blocks, I appreciate what Inhabitec's doing, but we don't need it over-designed into some beautiful garden like that because it will get trampled. So between the blocks, we can use live stakes, whips, fascines of native species such as native willows, silky willow, sandbar willow, shining willow. Maybe on the uphill side, a little 9-bark and red osier dogwood. Those are my specific.
I don't know if I want to get that specific.
Those are my
in
specific
designing
things.
it, but
Well, but even in number
yeah.
1 here, like
Yeah.
from our own department, they're recommending willow leaf spirea,
know,
which is an
I know.
Asian plant. Like we don't, again, we don't have a policy, but we've been very clear over the years, we want native plantings.
you want natural or native, sorry, is the better
Native
term.
plantings, and if we put in large blocks and not over-engineer with geotextile and concrete, if Mother Nature decides to bring up the lake level 2 feet and we get a huge November storm and it gets all crooked and whatnot, it's okay because those are just blocks. Like it didn't break and wash out half a piece of concrete and there's not geotextile everywhere. Like it's only natural materials then. And these items, they can root several feet down. So you can put a 4-foot live stake, which is just this little whip, between the natural stone blocks down into the soil, whatever it is. It can just be sand. We don't need to import topsoil. Like this is really over-engineered by everybody involved. So again, to be specific, whether it's item D or modification of 3, yes, say 90,000 to take out a bunch of the parking and tell Inhabitec, and you get 100,000. What can you do for us for $100,000? And put
You
it
mean
that, if we want to set an absolute budget of 200,000 to do the project.
Oh, you mean how much to do the whole, okay.
Yeah, like tell them they do fancy work. We don't need your fanciest. Just what can you do for 100,000?
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because that was going to be my next piece here is, you saw the design from Inhabitec, though, that approach costs money. And when we're making decisions like this, they have implications. I mean, particularly from what I'm hearing, we're going to want to do more of this elsewhere. But there is a trade-off, on prioritizing those dollars. When you're spending more in one place, you're not able to spend it over in another place. So it's good to hear that the city commission is already kind of thinking through that, maybe you have this to work with. The one thing I would just put out there is there might not be a lot that can be done for that number. I don't know the answer to that. And again, I'm trying to save us from a lot of headaches on everybody's part and manage expectations. So whatever we move forward with, I don't have all the right answers. I'm not an engineer. I am just hoping that we can have some trust and some understanding that whatever expectation you guys put out, we're going to do our darndest to meet that expectation within the parameters that you have. But sometimes in the real world, when we try to do those things, we're not always able to get all the way there. Again, when we go back to where we left off in July, we never finished the conversation. And that's what I need to do tonight, is finish the conversation so that we can bring something forward, whether it's a engineering proposal or it's a proposal to do the work or whatever it happens to be.
Mitch, you had your hand up.
Yes. I guess I could have requested this as soon as I saw the packet,
Please, you next.
but yeah. One thing that did not get included is this conversation didn't even start at the city commission or staff level, but back in August of 2019, when we were starting to see the impact of the high water, it was on Parks and Rec Board when I wasn't on that, but Sean Winter was a Parks and Rec commissioner. And as I recall, at that point, yes, it was in an advisory capacity, but they were saying, let's wait and see what it is, and then look at alternatives that have less pavement this close to the water. Especially as we're seeing MDOT redesigning the roadway, and we're going to see more usage of the trail as it has better connection into Elmwood Township. I really would like a proposal that, yes, we need to have some ADA accessibility there. We need to have some ability for people to drive up and drop off if they've got water toys or other beach equipment. But we don't need to have as much parking space as we currently do. And it's only half of the parking lot, half of the parking spaces that have been damaged so far. So I would say, I'm not going to give you a hard and fast number for how many we need to have versus how many we need to take, but I can see pretty clearly that there's half the parking lot is still intact, and we can, yes, that there could be some improvements to drainage or other aspects, but the other half has been damaged, and that you can pretty clearly draw a line and say, we can pull this back, we can have some plantings, and help to naturalize the area that had been formerly parking lots before the before Lake Michigan decided to join the war on parking.
Well, I'm just going to take a little note here that I guess I'm going to slightly disagree with some things that have been said here, because West End Beach was the beach I went to all the time when I was a kid, and I still see a lot of families there, and whether we had the full parking lot or this half now, there's always cars there. I know it's a place where a lot of downtown workers will go on their breaks or after dinner or after shifts for dinner. And I will support anything that this commission puts forward that has, even whether it's get rid of some of the spots, make them all ADA, whatever they do, but I would like to see the beach remain with some of the plans to make it ADA accessible. We do not have a lot of access to our beautiful beaches here for people who have mobility issues. And I think that's extremely important we keep that. I, again, disagree a little bit that I think a bathroom there is good. We can pretend that you're, something half a mile away is close. It's not, if you're walking or running, especially if you're maybe not a marathoner, such as myself when I run, having the bathroom there at that key access point to the Tart Trail for a lot of the neighborhoods and a lot of the other side of Division there, I think that is a good spot for a bathroom right now still. And also because it is going to be one of the more ADA-friendly beach spots, I would hate to say that, oh, here, we've made this beach spot that's very comfortable, but there's no amenities for you here. So I'm just throwing out those 2 cents of, I think there's been some really good ideas shared here. I think that the intention of not having any of the plastics and the sloughing is very important. But I think we have to also be doing this with everyone in mind, because we don't do that at a lot of our public spaces. Let me phrase that. We have a history of not having done that at our public spaces. I think we've gotten a lot better over the last few years.
So, well, I don't want to cut off any other
That's what I
commissioners
was
if
going
there's
to say.
other.
Does any other?
I'll just quickly say I am actually a fan of setting a number and then seeing what we can do within that number.
Okay. Go ahead,
Price.
Jackie. Yeah. No,
Just to say that I agree with your priorities for ADA accessibility and also family and pedestrian access, to make that as easy as possible.
So what I'm kind of hearing from everybody's comments, and correct me or throw in other ideas if you want, is we don't mind if we take out some of the spaces. We'd like to create it to be more ADA accessible, have some ADA accessible parking spots, but plant natural native plants. Keep the bathroom. I know I said that. I'm seeing some head nodding here. And then set the price that we can do that with. The bathroom is a second.
Well, the bathroom's part of the
Yeah,
grant
Yeah.
thing,
No,
because
no,
the
but-
plan was that this specific
It was
bathroom
mentioned at some
goes
point, we
away.
don't even need a bathroom, but I guess that's what I'm saying, is keep
And-
that concept in there too, in that space.
If we moved the bathroom, as Commissioner Shaw suggested, does that impact the grant?
The
Well, we
grant is
can-
for 2 different bathroom buildings already.
Okay.
There is one going to be at the volleyball courts.
Yeah, and we could look into that, but again, I'm trying to some extent, protect some of the work that, and vetting that's been put into this. And Michelle, I think you're still here. I'll let you know if we need you here, but my understanding is the bathrooms and that discussion, that was highly vetted at the Parks and Rec Commission. That was all part of the grant process. I would hate to just throw all that work out and just say, well, you know what, forget all of it, and we're just gonna do nothing, we're not gonna do that anymore. I think if the bathroom is left out of the discussion, I think what we have is, and I'll suggest a motion, but I think what we have is a pretty good place that still protects the intent of the beach and access for ADA. I mean, having a restroom, having ADA access to the beach and not having an ADA accessible restroom close by is almost, it doesn't necessarily go together very well. We're going to accommodate you here, but we're not going to accommodate this. So again, I think where we're at it provides a pretty good balance, and that's just one person's suggestion here. So I think the mayor did a pretty good job of summarizing. But what I'm hearing is that the goal here is to reduce the parking, I'm going to say by half, is what I kind of picking up and reading between the lines. There's going to be no geotextile, and side note, probably a discussion that needs to come back to the city commission at some point about, I don't even know if there are alternatives to geotextile, I don't know enough about it, but native plantings, I'm hearing natural stone, you guys don't want to see
Rip wrap.
riprap or busted up concrete or what have you, it's natural stone, and not over engineered. And then if you want to give us a budget target to stay within, I think that would be helpful when we go to talk to engineering, and if there's going to be an outside consultant helping us with this, to give them the parameters of this is what we have to work with. That's what I'm kind of hearing. Not kind of.
Do we have ideas on suggestions for the costs that we'd be looking
In the
at?
proposal, it said that there was 120,000 allocated in the 23-24 budget. Is that a place to begin?
We're going to have a hard time
For any of these options?
Yeah.
getting to that number. Unfortunately, I don't have the right number, but if you tell us that, I'm just looking at these numbers, if you say the number is 200, I'm comfortable with that as a starting point. When we go to get it designed or goes out to bid or whatever, we can bring that back. I can tell you based on this conversation, as much as I would prefer not to, create some sort of precedent, the design's going to come back here with the understanding that, look, we've used this direction. We worked with our experts. We've worked with other experts. This is what we were able to come up with for this project. I'm just concerned that on this or other projects, we're going to get into this habit and we're going to end up just spinning wheels and we're not going to get stuff done.
To that end, I'm just going to throw it to everybody, and you guys can let's make a deal. $200,000, because that seems to be within a lot of these projections, and as Commissioner Warner pointed out, the one that came in much higher than that was quite engineered. So it seems like maybe 200,000 could get us in the ballpark. It does have to come back to us anyways. I guess I would say to staff, if something comes in that looks like it ticks all the bells and whistles and it's 250 or 225, maybe give us a heads up and let us do that before we get into just absolute no's. But, if everything's coming at 300, 400, 500, then we're clearly not in the right direction here.
Yeah, if we were close, we'd bring back options on how to get that budget.
Yeah. Heather, go
Below.
ahead.
Would that include moving the parking to the parkway side and then getting the TART trail to move around back?
Yeah, I would say that is our number. I mean, we can include that in the motion that, our goal too is to try to emulate may not be the right word, but to the fullest point possible to try to achieve some of these riparian goals that we want to discuss further down the road. I hear that. I think we've got staff here that hears that. But yes, that would be engineering and the actual capital investment is what I would be interpreting that 200,000 number as. And if the more we can do in-house, we're going to save on those dollars. Again, I can talk more with the engineering department later this week or certainly before I leave. I think with what I'm hearing, there's probably a good chance that we could do a lot of this work and design it in-house. We can consult on Inhabitech or other folks out there on what would be, okay, we don't want the non-native stuff here. We want native plants. What's going to give me the closest benefit to this? What's going to give me a root system that's going to be closest to this? And there are folks in this community or elsewhere that we know that can help us with that information.
I'm looking at page 5 of an engineering drawing, and not looking for an answer now, but just for staff consideration. I don't know, like it's not clearly shown on here what the MDOT right-of-way line is. Like there is a dotted line, but that may not be. So if somehow we're already built as far south as we're allowed to be in that parking lot, like the pavement can't be any farther south, to me that encourages more of a parallel parking type of thing if we want to try to move the north edge of the parking to the south. If, however, we can use, say, half of that or whatever fraction of that kind of no man's land between the parking and the parkway, fantastic, because then I'd be more open to this half the parking or whatever, because we could still have the diagonal parking, but on the parkway side for half of it or more of an angle, whatever the geometry works out to be. But that line to me is kind of critical, like how far south can we go? Because each foot we move south frees up more park on the water side, whether it's sand or grass or plants,
Or a
whatever it might be.
pedestrian ramp.
Or the pedestrian ramp and the trail itself for getting people through.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, suggested motion that,
Do you want to take a
oh, wait,
stab at
wait,
this?
wait, wait, we've
I'm
got-
happy to
Sorry.
if you.
we've got
Oh,
Sean.
Please.
John Winter, Planning Director. I just want to add one other thing to the conversation so we can have it as part of the design. So in 2025, when MDOT reconstructs from Division to Cherry Bend, their intent is to reconstruct the trail between the parking lot and the travel lanes to separate it from the parking lot. So just want to put that out there as something to consider. Do we need to accommodate the trail in the parking lot if in 2025 we're going to be separating it? I appreciate Commissioner's Warner consideration of the parallel parking as an option to shrink that north-south extent, but just wanted to throw it out there.
Okay, that's good to know as we go forward.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. But yes, I mean, I think as long as everybody's amenable to it, we'd be wanting to design this in anticipation for the future so that we're not redesigning it here going forward.
And not saying that MDOT has to be a partner with the whole process, but make them aware of what's happening and just figure out, both for easement purposes and for their plans, what is something that works best for both parties.
I trust our staff to put heads together. I don't think they work in a vacuum. So I think that we've given them the instructions that are pretty clear that we want this respecting the buffer as much as possible, much more focus on pedestrian and accessibility versus parking spots, and then everything else that I think, Nate, you hit on very well. So I wanted to give you guys a second to formulate that motion.
I think Benjamin's got something drafted
Stalling.
up, so we're going to give him the
Stalling for
opportunity.
time there, go ahead.
Yes, that the city manager be directed to issue a request for proposals, which would include, generally speaking, reducing parking by half, including or providing for ADA parking spots, using native plants, natural stone, no geotextile products with a budget of $200,000.
Who made that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you,
Support.
Commissioner Treadwell and Commissioner Wilson. Anything else before we move to the vote?
Is it possible to mention pedestrian access in that motion, or is that redundant?
part of the TART.
Part of
We
the TART.
certainly could.
I think,
I think I mean, I'm on my way out the door, obviously, but with Benjamin and Sean is here and Michelle is here, I think we know what the goals are. You've given us, at least from my perspective, the clarity that we need in order to proceed with issuing and writing an RFP to have this designed and brought back.
great, thank you for that. Any comments from the public on this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we're moving on now. Michigan has made a lot of good changes, I think, I'll editorialize for a moment, to making voting more accessible to our citizens. And we're going to have Benjamin and Nate here present us with a couple things coming up in relation to those changes.
This is Benjamin's line of expertise, so I'm going to defer the next three items purely to him.
Thank you. Yes, so in November of 2022, of course, voters in Michigan gave themselves the constitutional right to early in-person voting. And that means for all federal and statewide elections that there's 9 days of early voting that starts the second Saturday before the election and concludes the Sunday immediately prior to it. Early in-person voting isn't the same as absentee voting. Of course, now in Michigan, voters have the right to an absentee ballot for any reason or no reason at all. Early in-person voting, what that provides is the voter can come into the early voting site for that jurisdiction and be given a ballot, cast that ballot, meaning they insert it into the tabulator. So what's advantageous about that is, one, the voter inserts the ballot into the tabulator themselves, but if they make a mistake on that ballot, the tabulator will reject it, and they're given the opportunity, the voter is given the opportunity to correct that mistake, for instance, overvoting. The other thing that I want to mention is absentee voters will also have the option of bringing their absentee ballot to the in-person early voting site and depositing or casting that ballot in the tabulator, or having the local clerk have their absent voter counting board tabulate that absentee ballot. So with that said, we're recommending that the governmental center lower level be established as the early voting site. This would be for all voters in the city. And I do want to mention that while we're only required to provide early in-person voting on statewide and federal elections, that our intention is to provide it for all elections, including local ones, so that there's clarity and people aren't guessing when they're allowed to vote through early voting. Great. So with that said, our intention is to have this building, the governmental center, designated as the early in-person voting site.
Any questions, or anybody want to make a motion?
I will
go ahead.
love to make a motion.
Well, I've got a question.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Then you can make the motion, Heather. But let's go ahead with your question.
Yes, of course, this is just the city operating its own elections, but considering this is also the center for the whole county, are any adjacent townships looking at having this as an early voting center?
No, it would only be the city.
Okay.
Yep.
Go ahead, Heather. Thank you.
Okay, I move that the governmental center located at 400 Boardman Avenue, Traverse City, Michigan, be designated as the early in-person voting site for city voters as recommended by the city clerk.
Support.
All right. Motion by Shaw, second by Wilson. Any other comments?
My question is just to verify fully barrier-free access.
Mhm.
from the lower
Absolutely.
level.
Yes, yes,
It has the advantage of already being an approved voting site, so it's checks all the boxes.
yes.
All right, anything from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Question before you jump into this next one. Could we talk about and vote on the 4 and 5 together if we made a combined motion?
Certainly,
Okay.
yes.
Go
Yeah.
right ahead then.
Sure. So the last two voting, the polling places, this is for Election Day in-person voting, that are located in the schools are at Traverse Heights Elementary and Glen Loomis School. And TCAPS has been a great partner for us and has been hosting city voters for years, but they're really wanting to move voting out of the schools for security reasons. And so it's my recommendation that we relocate Precinct 7, which was at Traverse Heights Elementary School, to the Traverse Area District Library's main branch at 610 Woodmere Avenue. This would be effective coming with the February 27 presidential primary and then be in perpetuity. And then for Precinct 10, that would move from Glenn Loomis to the Carnegie Building at 322 6th Street. These changes don't affect who voters are represented by. It doesn't change their voting district boundaries or anything, just solely the place where they go for same-day voting on Election Day itself. And I'll mention for the Carnegie Building, we do have Precinct 3 there also, and it is absolutely permissible to have multiple polling places in one building. And if these changes are approved, my office is going to be sending a mailer. We're required by law to send a mailer to every registered voter in the city, letting them know where the early in-person voting site is. And then we'll also be, for those voters that are affected by these changes, providing them with information regarding that, as well as some 101 with respect to all the changes that were approved in 2022 in general. So with that, we could have a combined motion, which would be that the relocation of polling place for Precinct 7 from Traverse Heights Elementary School at 933 Rose Street to the Traverse Area District Library at 610 Woodmere Avenue, which has been determined by the city clerk as a suitable location for a polling place, and the relocation of polling place for Precinct 10 from Glenn Loomis at 1009 Oak Street to the Carnegie Building at 322 6th Street, which has been determined by the city clerk as a suitable location for a polling place, be approved.
I thought I was going to have to do that. Does someone want to make that motion? Thank you, Heather.
Support.
Thank you, Ms. Stanley. All right, so we've got that motion. Did anybody have any questions since we had him jump right into the motion? Go ahead, Mai.
So I do want to just clarify, because I think maybe we have some people who want to give public comment about this, maybe not. We have some youngsters, I see, that may be civically engaged, but that this was at the request of TCAPS that these polling places would be moved.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
this is not the city saying we want to remove ourselves from TCAPS schools, but rather the request that the schools, for their security, to not have polling places
Right,
located
which
there.
we as a city understand.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, then we have the, oh, sorry.
I guess I have a good question.
Okay.
Had there been any investigation for other locations that meet current election law as being suitable for polling locations, particularly if there are options that exist within the precinct boundaries as they're already described? Currently, we have 3 polling locations within Traverse City Precinct 1, so both Precinct 8 and Precinct 3 vote outside of the prescribed boundaries for their own precinct. And now we'd be changing 2 other precincts to not have a polling location physically in their precinct.
Right, and it's not required. I mean, obviously, we want to make things as convenient for voters as possible. The answer is yes. These locations that we chose were because we believe that we'll have the option to be in them for the longest period of time. I will say further down the road, probably in 2 or 3 years, once we have a better feel for how voters are voting, and we're probably going to see a lot less election day voting occurring. That's what other states that have had these changes see, that there's a great shift to mostly absentee voting, and then also coupled with that early voting, that will probably end up reducing the polling locations pretty significantly, just because we're seeing less and less voting activity occurring on Election Day.
All right, well, thanks. We know you're really plugged in on that, Benjamin. And again, to reiterate that, before we vote, just for the public, that all of these changes, including the early voting rules that now apply, will be sent out to the early voting to everyone, and the precincts that are going to be changed, people will be receiving a mailer and be notified. So
Yes.
this isn't going to happen up here, and people are just going to be surprised when they show up to vote. I mean, people are always surprised when they show up to vote, but hopefully not too many. So, any other questions? All right. Anybody from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All right. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Stanley,
Aye.
Commissioner Treadwell,
Nay.
Commissioner Werner,
No, or yes, I'm a yes. Sorry, I was consumed by the ayes and yays. And
Mayor
No.
Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
and Mayor Shamrow.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right. And next up, we have an appointments, and this is an ad hoc interview committee to make recommendations regarding a development area citizens council for the tax increment financing plan. Let you talk about that, Nate?
Oh.
I'm happy to if you'd like.
We put the two motions together, so we kind of jumped ahead.
I think most know, but I'll have Benjamin add, and we also have the DDA Executive Director here as well, if there's additional questions. But anytime you're establishing or extending, revising, whatever happens to be a TIF and development plan, you have to have what's referred to as a Citizens Area Council. These are folks that are made up of people that live within a downtown, and as I recall, the threshold of that is when you have 100 or more residents within a downtown. So this is a part of continuing the process of reviewing the potential extension of what's commonly referred to as TIF 97. What did I miss?
I don't think really anything other than, of course, this council would then present to the city commission its findings before the adoption, if there was an adoption of a new plan.
Ms. Dorenzi, did you have anything else that needed to be added? Okay.
All right. Seeing none, then I'll take a motion. This is a regular ad hoc appointment per our policy, so the names were already drawn. So we have Jackie Anderson, Mai Stanley, and Mitch Treadwell. Luck of the draw on this one.
I'll make the recommendation that an ad hoc interview committee be established to make a recommendation regarding 9 appointments to the Development Area Citizens Council in connection with the possible moving downtown forward tax increment financing TIF plan, and that Commissioner Jackie Anderson, Commissioner Mai Stanley, and Commissioner Mitchell Treadwell be appointed to such committee with Commissioner Mai Stanley to serve as chair, with the Downtown Development Authority Board of Trustees to designate 3 members to serve on the ad hoc interview committee at its December 15th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Both of you are very good volunteers. Thank you for that. Okay, motion and a second. Go ahead, Commissioner Warner.
I think it's a question maybe for the city clerk. Any concerns having an even number on this
Good question.
panel? Would it be, I mean, it shouldn't be, but in the rare instance.
Sure. I think, that's always a possibility if you have the need to break a tie vote. At the end of the day, the recommendation has to be approved by the full city commission. So not to be like that, but I almost kicked the question back to you.
No, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a
Yep.
good answer.
That's fair. All right, any public comment on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. So I think we'll do this right here. This is usually our reports and announcements and correspondence, but I'm going to give the city manager a moment here. But first, I'm going to preemptively, we kind of said this is going to be a bit of a moment of appreciation here, but wanted to thank you. This is probably our last meeting unless something happens, so knock on whatever. This is our last meeting of 2023, and we won't be meeting again until January 8th, likely, of 2024. So at that time, Liz Vogel will be in place as our new city manager, but I wanted to take a moment and thank you so much, Nate, for the work you've done for us, bringing a very fresh perspective to us, and really helping to get us down the road of some new thinking and some changes. So I wanted to thank you, and I know you wanted to say something too, but we couldn't let it go without also thanking you.
Can I go first?
Yeah.
Commissioner Treadwell,
No, you're
thank you.
open comment, this is report.
No, I just had a quick question about what you said.
You
but-
do not get questions.
No, I did not want to have a word or say a word because I was looking for anything from you all. I just wanted to take a moment and thank the city commission and the community, and in particular the staff, for the opportunity to work with you all for the last about 6 months or so. I don't think any of us knew that I'd still be here at this point. We think this is my last meeting. That could change. I'm still here till January 1st. 11:59 p.m. But it has been an enjoyable experience. It has not always been easy. We have not always seen eye to eye on everything here, but it's been a great experience. And I guess if I was to leave you with any words, there's a lot of work to do, and I know we've talked about that a lot over my tenure, and as I pointed out, some areas where we need work, but You know, if we can get through, I'm not going to be here. If you all can get through these tough conversations, and there's higher impact things that are coming, if you guys can all handle them with staff, with the community, with yourselves, like we just got through the West End parking lot discussion, you're way ahead. So I would just encourage you to continue to work on building this team environment, building this environment where, yes, we can agree to disagree, or we can work through tough conversations. You really do have a great staff here. Can we be better? Absolutely. Every day, we as staff, we as humans, we should always be striving to do better. And I think you have a group of people that are always striving to do better here. It's a good group to build upon. Wish you all luck. I wish Liz Vogel luck. I don't know what else to say, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you for the opportunity.
I wanted to save that as a report before we get to the final comments or anything. So I know that with a month going, commissioners might have other things to put out there to the public. So, but I wanted to give Nate a moment. So with that, all our other reports are here for you to read. So we will move on to the general public comment. Does anybody in the public have any comment to make? Go right ahead, and just we'll have this is the first time actually that we're gonna have Benjamin do the rules for public comment.
Oh, yes. I'll ask that you state your name and address, indicate if you're a city resident, non-city resident, or a city business owner. We've got a 3-minute time allotment. When your time has elapsed, the timer will beep, and we just ask that all language be respectful to everyone. Thank you.
All right, thanks. My name is Christina Trogan-Lemie. I'm at 1314 Peninsula Drive, and I am a city resident. I'm here to talk about Consumers Energy's plan to cut a 160-foot wide vegetation-free swath through Traverse City and the eminent domain lawsuit they are preparing to bring against Traverse City residents to seize their property. Their plan is to clear cut all trees along their line that runs between the Orchard Heights neighborhood and Peninsula Drive, down Milliken, past the Pines at the high school, along the wooded NMC property, the Civic Center, and all homes along that route, and possibly more, but they will not answer any questions in regards to scope. The clear-cut path will be 80 feet wide. An additional 80 feet will be clear-cut at their sole discretion. Traverse City will lose thousands of trees. Personally, I have offered time and again to work with consumers on the responsible management of vegetation. I have offered to trim my trees, top my trees, pay for them to be cabled, remove trees that are concerning, and even remove some trees that multiple arborists have told me are not a concern to the lines. They refuse to negotiate or answer questions. At one point, I asked if I did clear cut my yard, could I still keep my property, and the answer was no. Which brings me to my point about eminent domain and the impending lawsuit Consumers is preparing to bring against myself and my neighbors. If Consumers is successful, they will be able to utilize my property for the support of, quote, constructing, operating, maintaining, inspecting, including aerial patrol, surveying, replacing, reconstructing, improving, removing, relocating, changing the size of, enlarging, and protecting the line, as well as conducting any other activities as may be convenient. In addition, for the rest of my life, I will have to get, quote, prior written agreement executed by Consumers Real Estate Department to plant anything. Keep in mind, I'm still legally liable for this property, and I will have to pay property taxes on it. The seizure and clear cutting will gut my property, wipe out my slope, and it's not necessary. This is a corporation with almost $1 billion in profit in 2022, and they can't work with us homeowners to manage the vegetation near a line that was already deemed safe enough to install. This is a city issue. I need your help. I have some questions that I hope you can answer. I will be emailing you and sending you some information this week. I think we should fight back, say no to eminent domain, and no to clear cutting in Traverse City. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. Any other public comment tonight? Seeing none, any final thoughts from the commission as we go into another about a month break here?
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. And then, oh, Tim, you were.
Well, just depending what, related to public comment, if there's anything from staff that could be shared with us, if the city has heard from consumers, because it is that same line runs down Milliken, which is the city's right-of-way. So anything that the city is aware of that could be shared, be appreciated.
Much appreciated, Commissioner Warner. Yeah, just a closing thought. Thank you, everybody. We hope you're enjoying your holidays. We had the big kickoff with the light parade and welcoming Santa, and he's there if you want to go make your request at the Civic Square. But we will also be lighting the town menorah on Thursday evening, where Hanukkah begins at sundown. So we hope that some of the community will join us for that, as well as, I believe that's Women's Night. We've got Men's Night coming up. So there's a lot. We won't be here, but our downtown merchants will be hard at work, and I know there's a lot of other great activities in the arts at the Opera House and the TSO and Old Town Playhouse. So use your Monday nights to go support all of our lovely community events, and we really want to thank you all for tuning in tonight, and thank everybody up here for another great meeting. I appreciate you all, and yeah, unless there's anything else from staff, thank you all so much. Have a great night and happy holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.